Hi everyone, welcome to the Whiteleyverse with me, Connor Whiteley, for another daily short story. Now, before I start today's story, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this short story and any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers and at your local bookstore and local library if you requested, and you can order paperback copies from Amazon. Now, here's today's short story. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did writing it.
Loving Transmas. The 13th of December 2023. Canterbury, England. Riley Kennedy leant against the surprisingly warm cream walls of the large box-like church hall, as he admired all his handiwork for the most important night of the year. Riley was so glad that the 4 rows of long plastic tables were perfectly neat, tidy, and filled with Christmas cheer for all his friends that were coming in 2 hours' time. The warming aromas of mulled wine, Diet Coke and wood varnish filled his senses as Riley listened to the pop and bang and buzz of the church hall as the heating kicked into action. He was never really sure about having this event in the hall, because he wasn't religious and no one in the Trans network was. But the church hall was always big enough for the network, yet it was still cozy and warm, and there was just something charming about it. He had loved the tiny little Christmas red crackers that his mum had managed to find in the Canterbury Christmas markets. The little splash of red looked great on top of everyone's paper plate, plastic cutlery, and bright blue, pink, and green tinsel that ran down the middle of the tables. He had never been too sure about the tinsel. The last thing he wanted was for the others to feel cut off from the person opposite them, but the tinsel looked great. Riley really liked the delicious, mouth-watering aromas of freshly roasted chestnuts, sausage rolls, and juicy roasted pork that was laid out next to him. He really didn't want there to be any leftovers, but his best friend Caroline had brought so much food. He knew that was going to be flat-out impossible. And that was why he loved Transmas. Riley went over to the impressive array of food laid out on the table, from pasta dishes to sandwiches to desserts. There was something for everyone, and that was the whole point of Transmas. A wonderful Christmas meal, where all the trans people in Canterbury could come together and celebrate Christmas. Riley smiled as he saw Caroline, in a stunning little black dress, bringing in even more food. He really hoped she was done emptying her car now. He didn't doubt for a second he was one of the lucky ones in the Trans network. He had a family that loved, treasured, and always supported him, but so many other amazing trans people didn't have that option. It was why Riley always tried his hardest to make Transmas an incredible experience for anyone. He was so looking forward to the conversations, the music, and the food. The network was his entire life, and he liked meeting, talking, and just being with other trans people. Especially at Christmas. "Oh shoot," Caroline said. As much as Riley didn't want to stop inspecting all the delicious, mouth-watering cakes on the edge of the table, he cocked his head and looked at Caroline. She was frowning, and he had actually never seen her do that before. "What's wrong?" Riley asked, going over to her. "Sean texted me and he's ill, so he can't bring the Christmas tree," Caroline said, coughing slightly. She was probably trying to remember her femme voice training, and Riley was glad it was going well for her. "Okay, do we need a tree?" As soon as the words left Riley's mouth, he just grinned because that had to be one of the most stupid things he had ever said. The Christmas tree was a critical part of Transmas, because of the Secret Santa, more than anything else. Riley had already brought a present for everyone, and when everyone else came in, they were going to put their presents under the tree. No tree meant no gifts. Riley hated it, as his stomach churned at the very idea at some of the members not receiving any presents this Christmas. He knew of at least 10 trans people for who these gifts would be the only ones they got this year. Riley flat out couldn't have them missing out just because they didn't have a tree. He checked his watch, and as much as he didn't want to go out and leave little Miss Chaos in charge of the church hall, he knew he was going to have to go out. "I won't destroy anything, you know?" Caroline said, grinning. What happened at Trans Day of Remembrance? What happened to that artwork with all the names on? Riley asked, going over to the back of the hall, where his black peacoat was. It was burnt down, Caroline said. I may have left my curling irons on, but I blame my boyfriend. Riley just laughed and shook his head. Caroline could blame her sweet, pretty boyfriend as much as she wanted, but everyone in the network knew she was a lovable nightmare. Riley headed out the church hall and just hoped beyond hope he could find a Christmas tree quickly. Or a lot of Christmases were going to be dampened, if not ruined entirely. James Roberts absolutely had to find a Christmas tree as he made his way through the impressive cobblestone high street of Canterbury. He had only been at Kent University for 3 months after moving down from Solihull up north, but he really liked the city. The high street itself was wonderful, with its old green, blue and red shops that could have been from the Victorian era for all he knew. James really wasn't brave enough to walk in the middle of the crowd of young families, women and men in their thick winter coats, as they marched up and down the high street searching the stalls for any last bargains before they headed home for the winter holidays. Instead, James stuck to the outside edge of the crowd surge, allowing the cold white marble wall of one of Canterbury's many banks chill his right hand. He smiled at the sight of so many happy people, of all shapes, sizes, and ages, laughing and smiling together. It was why Christmas was one of the most amazing holidays ever. There was so much joy, so much amazing food, and James just loved how the holidays brought out the best in people. The bright golden, blue and white lights in the shape of Christmas trees, stars and angels hung over the Christmas market like bright beacons. And James had already taken tons of photos earlier in the week to show his parents and sister when he got home. He was so excited to tell them about Canterbury. They would have loved it here if they ever bothered to visit. James couldn't decide on what his favorite thing was, but maybe it was the tiny cafes, restaurants, and niche shops in the narrow cobblestone streets hiding off the high street. The entire city was just such a friendly, welcoming place that James never ever wanted to leave, but he was sadly going to have to, unless he could find a way to pay for his course. He couldn't believe how he had made such a silly mistake on his university application that told the university that he was self-funding, not applying through Student Finance England, and he had contacted Student Finance about getting his student loan, but they were taking ages to respond. And Kent University wanted their money before New Year. James just shook his head as his breathing quickened. His ears started ringing. He felt like his chest was going to explode. James pushed his back against the icy cold marble wall, and he focused on the somewhat nice, if not a little out-of-tune, carol singing in the distance. It might have been some twisted version of Silent Night, but James had no idea. The singers were that bad, but they were having fun, so that was all that mattered. He went back into the crowd, and he forced himself not to give his money problems any headspace. He was going to have a nice time at the Christmas party his flatmates were doing tonight. He might even meet a nice man, and that would be good. James went over to a Christmas stall, inside a large fake log cabin with flat sides, but it had been painted to look like real logs. Clearly, this owner hadn't had much of a budget for the stall this year, but it was nice enough. The stall had shelves upon shelves of little rose gold, copper, and golden Christmas decorations. From baubles to tinsel to little figures that James had no idea what they were meant to be. They were nice though, just not nice enough to buy. "Can I help you?" a man said in his late 50s, wearing a pretty Christmas jumper, black trousers, and black shoes. James had no idea how a man could comfortably wear shoes and trousers all afternoon and evening in the cold, but each to their own. "I need a Christmas tree." "You're a Christmas stall, you must have one," James said, not exactly wanting to sound as desperate as he was. The older man laughed. "You're in luck. I only have one left, but you might want to be quick. Another guy was checking it out only moments ago." The older man pointed behind him, and James nodded his thanks and rushed past the man. He couldn't believe how lucky he was when he saw the 4-feet-tall real Christmas tree with large thick branches, plenty of needles, and it was perfectly straight. Of course there would be plenty of straight jokes later on, like how the tree was straighter than anyone at the party, but James loved it. It was going to be perfect, and it was certainly going to help make the party perfect tonight. James grabbed the Christmas tree, but another man grabbed it at the exact same time. He couldn't believe that someone else was trying to steal his Christmas tree. He needed this tree for his party. James looked at the owner of the hand, and he was ready to give this guy a piece of his mind. James's heart pounded in his chest. His hands turned sweaty. His mind went blank out of all the choice words he had been about to shout. His mouth dropped open as he stared at the most incredible, stunning and striking man he had ever seen. He had never seen such a fit, sexy guy in his entire life. The guy's face were all lines and angles, and there was something so beautiful in his face. Like it was a perfect blend of sexy femininity and masculinity. James just stared into the guy's bright sapphire eyes, and he wanted so badly to run his fingers across the guy's face to get rid of the rogue black strand of curly hair that threatened to hide one of his stunning eyes. The man was beyond beautiful, but they were both holding the Christmas tree. But if the Christmas tree meant James had to see this guy a little longer, then he didn't have a problem with that. Not a problem at all. Riley just grinned like a little schoolboy as he stared at the cute man that had threatened to steal his Christmas tree. His stomach churned up a storm, his mouth was as dry as a desert, and Riley flat out couldn't understand why he felt so attracted to his man. He supposed it could have been an effect of being on testosterone, but Riley just couldn't help but feel drawn to this beautiful, gorgeous man. The man had a classic gym body, with a wide chest and a tiny thin waist that Riley really wanted to wrap his arms around. Riley really liked the man's bright blue hair with some subtly purple highlights that shouldn't have worked, but on this man he looked divine. And the man's smile was just incredible. Riley had no idea how the man managed to do a smile that perfect, that divine, and that natural. Riley really wanted to keep looking at this beautiful man for as long as he could. "Excuse me, boys," the older man said, pushing past the hottie, and the cedarwood sense of his aftershave made Riley want to sneeze. Riley smiled. He always liked being called a boy or man, it was so affirming, and when he looked back at the hottie, his divine smile was even more radiant. "I'm sorry, but I need this tree," Riley said, forcing the words out of his dry mouth. "So do I, and it doesn't matter how hot you are." "I need it," the hottie said. Riley grinned and playfully pulled the tree in his direction. "Real smooth there. At least ask for my name first before you flirt." "Who says I'm flirting?" the hottie said, trying to pull the Christmas tree in his direction. "Maybe I just want to disarm you so you let go." Riley wanted to laugh, but he couldn't afford to lose his grip. He couldn't let the network down, and he wasn't going to prevent the giving ceremony for the sake of some flirt. "I need it, please give it to me," Riley said, surprised at the panic in his own voice. The hottie cocked his head. "I'm James, and why do you need the tree so badly?" Riley's heart pounded in his chest. He so badly wanted the pounding to be because of James, a beautiful name for a beautiful man, but he knew it was because he was still cagey telling others about the network. He never knew how people would react to him being trans. His feelings didn't matter here. He had to get the tree for the sake of the others. Tonight the local trans group is having Transmas, and there's a giving ceremony. Just think Secret Santa, and for some trans people, these are the only presents they get this year. "I want to give them something special, so I need the tree," Riley said, really hoping James wouldn't run off now he had basically outed himself. Riley felt James's grip loosen, and the aroma of fur washed over him again. "You're trans?" James asked. Then his eyes widened, like he had committed a crime. Sorry, is that rude?" "I don't know. I've never met a trans man before, but I think you're really cute and hot." Riley laughed and almost let go of the tree. "Thanks, I guess, and that's fine. Actually, you want to come to Transmas? Everyone's trans there, but we welcome trans allies too, and there's more than enough food in." James let go of the tree and placed a wonderfully warm, soft finger against Riley's lips. "I would love to come, if you don't mind, that is," James said, giving Riley an amazing grin again. "Yeah," Riley said, knowing it was all he could say, as he went over to the older man, paid for the tree, and grabbed James so they could go back to the church hall together. Riley seriously hoped he could make it back to the church hall in time before his knees gave way, which was going to be next to impossible, walking next to such a hot, sexy man. Very impossible indeed. James had no idea what he was feeling as he followed sexy Riley into the church hall. He couldn't believe how large, nicely decorated, and packed it was. He had never seen so much tinsel, food, and rows upon rows of tables so artfully arranged. James was even more surprised at the sheer amount of great-looking trans men, women, and non-binary people that were talking, laughing, and just having a great time. James didn't want Riley to notice, but a small group of cute men caught his eye on the other side of the hall. They were all wearing tight-fitting Christmas jumpers, jeans, and they were grinning like this was the best day of their lives. They weren't quite as beautiful as Riley, but James had to admit, there were some good-looking people here tonight. James followed Riley over to the massive table filled with food, like juicy roast pork, sausage rolls, and freshly roasted chestnuts. They all smelt amazing, and that was before James had managed to get a proper look at the desserts. He might have seen some eclairs, but Riley took him by the hand before he could pick which one he wanted. "I hope it's okay, I brought a friend I just met," Riley said to a rather pretty woman in a little black dress. "Of course, sweetie," the woman said, extending her hand to James. "I'm Caroline, and as you can see, I didn't burn down the hall whilst my right hand was gone." James guessed he was missing something, but as a group of young girls went past, Caroline started talking to one of them, and she disappeared. "She runs the network," Riley said, taking James's hands in his, and James really loved the warm feeling of chemistry, attraction, and interest that flowed between them. James wanted to kiss Riley so badly because he was so damn hot, but he forced himself not to. James allowed Riley to guide him over to 2 seats near the food table, and James noticed a group of people with matching paper crowns from crackers were setting up the Christmas tree. They were throwing up tinsel, laughing, and just having a brilliant time. The group seemed to get even more excited when Christmas music started to be played. James really did like Christmas. It was so magical. "This is great," James said, looking back at Riley and finding him cuter and cuter with each passing second. "Tell me about yourself." "Classic Dateline that is," Riley said, grinning. "I'm a student at Kent University, studying psychology in my 2nd year. I live in the city center with some friends, and I realized I was a trans man at 16. What about you?" "Yeah, same really. Student at Kent Uni doing 1st-year physics, living on campus, and I'm not trans, but I knew I was gay since I was 14. James subtly bit his tongue at the mention of university. He had only just started university, and he might have to leave Kent before he had even started to build a life for himself. He had made a few friends and joined the LGBT+ society, but he had been focusing on his studies and settling in. James had wanted to start making friends next term in the new year. Something that probably wasn't possible now. "What's wrong?" Riley asked, rubbing his hands, and James's wayward parts flared to life. James grinned. He hadn't told anyone about his money problems, not even his parents, but there was just something so alluring, so nice, and so beautiful about Riley that he felt like he could tell him anything. "I can't date you, you know," James said, knowing he was getting ahead of himself. Riley smiled and leant back, almost hitting someone's back with his head as they got some food. "I like you a lot," Riley said, "but you're hiding something. Is mentioning dating a way for you to disarm me again?" James so badly wanted to kiss Riley, yet he couldn't do that, so he told Riley everything about his student finance error and his money problems. "Ah, I'm so sorry you're going through that," Riley said. "That's awful." James was a little surprised when Riley hugged him tight, and James loved the feeling of Riley's thin, sexy body against his. "How much do you actually owe the uni?" Riley asked. James was about to answer when the music changed in the church hall to a jazzy version of Jingle Bells. It was rather good. "James?" "Sorry," James said, hugging him even tighter. £4,000 for the first term. I have 2.5 grand, but I can't find any more money." Riley sadly broke the hug. That's a lot, and that is a problem. James just folded his arms, as he had a sense they both knew exactly how big a problem this actually was. If James couldn't pay the university, then he was going to have to go back home, and that meant a relationship with Riley would be next to impossible. And a relationship was exactly what James wanted to explore. About an hour later, Riley flat out couldn't believe how wonderful, great, and kind James was. Riley might have been involved in the network for a good year, but he had never met someone like James before. A cute person that acted so naturally and affirmingly around trans people. Riley, of course, had no problems with cisgender people, but there was always that odd period when someone found out he was trans or something. There was always a few days or weeks when they weren't sure how to address him, what to say to him, and how to be supportive without being over the top. Yet Riley really liked how there was none of that with James. James was just his wonderful self. "Come and put your presents by the tree, everyone," Caroline said, as loud as she could over the Christmas music playing in the background. Riley winked at her, and he was so glad, as he sat on a comfortably warm chair around a table filled with his friends and James, that the Christmas tree was perfect. He couldn't deny that Paul, Jarek, and Jessica had done a great job with the tree. He had never seen so many babbles, lights, and little angels holding trans flags hanging from a tree. And for some reason, all the decorations worked together beautifully. "Nice meeting you," a man said to James that Riley didn't recognize as he left the table. Riley grabbed James's hand as the aromas of sausage rolls, cream cakes, and strawberries washed over him as a group of women in festive dresses walked past. "You seem right at home," Riley said, rubbing James's hand. "I guess so." Riley really wanted to ask and talk about James's problem, but they had both been racking their brains for the past hour, in between conversations, eating, and catching up with friends. Riley had suggested just talking to the university support services, but that wasn't an option because James had already done that, and the money was too much. Riley sort of understood that, because those support services weren't really there to cover tuition fees. James had suggested escorting. Riley was fairly sure he was joking, and he had pointed out there wasn't the best use of their time. And Riley had played the jealousy card. Riley supposed there was one other option, but it was risky for him personally, and he wasn't even sure it would work, but he was going to suggest it anyway. "What about the network's support fund?" Riley asked James. "What's that?" James asked, picking a cocktail sausage from his plate. "The networks became a charity last week, and it meant we could transfer a lot of our donations into our bank account. The support fund is a pot of money for members to help them with transitioning, housing, and a whole bunch of other stuff we haven't really decided on yet." Riley had no idea how much of that was true. He only knew that much because Caroline had used him as a sounding board for the past few months, whilst she and the other trustees wrote out the articles and legal stuff. "But I'm not trans," James said. "It wouldn't be right for me to take that money, raised by a trans group, for innocent trans people to use." Riley shook his head. "We're all queer here. Whether you're gay or trans, we are in this world together." Riley grinned as he said that because he realized he really wanted this. He needed James to be okay, and needed him to go to Kent University. He wanted a relationship with James more than ever, or at least to see what was possible. That was only possible if James found a way to pay his tuition fees while student finance sorted out their stuff. "Please," Riley said, hugging James and seriously enjoying how amazing his body felt against his. James broke the hug and frowned. "I don't want to, but I'll only do it if I'm allowed to pay back the money, with some interest. Maybe £50. Riley grinned, and he so badly wanted to kiss James's soft, beautiful lips and run his fingers through that artfully done purple and blue hair. James was such a great, lovely man that Riley really wanted to get to know more. "Done?" Riley said, taking James by the hand and leading him over to Caroline. Riley had no idea if he was more excited or terrified, because this was the conversation that would determine if their relationship even had a chance of starting. James rubbed Riley's smooth hand as they went over to Caroline by the Christmas tree, which just shouldn't have worked with those decorations, but somehow it did. James nodded at some women wearing Christmas cracker hats as they finished their conversation with Caroline, and she just smiled at them both. "Great to see you finally have a boyfriend, Rill," Caroline said, grinning like a schoolgirl. "That's what we need to talk to you about," James said by accident, and he looked round for a drink, but there wasn't any alcohol here. His throat dried up as Riley squeezed his hand. "So James has a problem here," Riley said, as he explained the entire situation and everything they had tried so far. James couldn't believe how embarrassing this was. All he had wanted to do was come to university, have fun, and escape Solihull for a few years. If only he hadn't been so silly and filled out the wrong box on the finance form. But then James just looked at the beautiful, sexy trans man standing next to him, the man that was going out on a limb for him, and the man who was risking his reputation by asking a massive favor for someone he had only just met. James didn't know if that was intensely kind, or maybe just the man Riley was. A sweet, kind, beautiful man that James really wanted to get to know more. "So what do you think?" Riley asked. James wasn't sure what Caroline was thinking. Her face was blank, and it was a hell of a poker face. She wasn't giving anything away for a moment. "I promise I'll pay it all back with interest. I don't want to take advantage of anyone, so I understand if you say no," James said, wanting Caroline to know he was a good guy. James had wanted to talk to her more tonight, but they had both been busy talking to other people, and James hadn't wanted to leave Riley's side for a moment. James gestured to all the happy men and women and non-binary people sitting at the tables. "I don't want to take away from this little, I don't know, group of great people that are so kind, chatty, and interesting. They welcomed me without a second thought. Granted, I think some of them thought I was a trans woman, but these are all such kind people that I don't want to take from." Caroline laughed. "Oh honey, I was just teasing you with the poker face, and I like cracking newbies. But do you really like him, Rill?" "Of course." James hugged Riley in surprise of how quickly he answered. "I suppose," Caroline said, pretending like this was an impossible decision, "the network could lend you the money you need on 3 conditions." "Anything," James said, extending his hand to Caroline. "You take that cute man of yours on a date, you keep coming to our group, and you pass your degree," Caroline said, grinning. "That first condition is a tough one," James said. "Shut up you," Riley said, bringing the man he seriously liked in for a deep, long, passionate kiss, and it had to be one of the best kisses he had ever had.
Welcome back everyone, it's me again, Connor Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested, and you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the Whiteleyverse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.